Hi friends, Mindy here. Welcome back to another Bible study with me. Today we are going to be doing a character sketch of Ruth, and I'm just going to share a few of my resources today. This first one is called All the Women of the Bible. This is a newer resource to me. There's actually like two books in one in this one, and there's a section where it's just kind of the book of names, and then in the back of it there's another section that's like the stories sort of retelling of them. It's not actual like the scriptures, it's just kind of a retelling of the actual story. This book, however, is one of my favorite ones, which this is the who's who in the Bible. Everything in here is really easily accessible. Everything's alphabetical. It's just very easy resource to use. So that's one of my favorites. I also have the Baker Encyclopedia of Bible People. This one is a little trickier in terms of finding everything because they kind of have it sorted by time period instead of like alphabetically or whatever, but there is an index in the back that you can access to sort of get to that information. And then the last book that I used was The Remarkable Women of the Bible. This book is by Elizabeth George, and I really love this book. So this book actually has two chapters dedicated to the story of Ruth and Naomi, and I'm just kind of showing you here. But one of the things that I really love about the way that this book is written is it gives you some like practical takeaways and things that you can apply to your own life as you're, looking at these biblical women. And so I really enjoy this book, and it's just kind of a reference to kind of go back to. So I am using my Disciples Journal here from Bythewell4god. I will put my affiliate link down below. I believe they are still in the shop. And I am just turning to a fresh page, and I am going to start out with the name of my character today, which is Ruth, obviously. I'm spelling this out. I'm using the Silas alphas because they're amazing and I love them, but I need to make sure that they're all going to fit on this little label. So I'm just kind of spacing them out, and then I'll stamp them individually to make sure I can get them all squeezed on there. And I know that this story of Ruth is there's so much in these four little chapters of Ruth that you can unpack. It's such a beautiful, beautiful redemption story. There's so much in there. So I'm going to try not to do too much of the actual like takeaways and everything, like unpacking this whole, Bible study on Ruth, as much as I am just kind of showing how I go about doing some of these types of studies. So I have her name across the top. I have the meaning of her name, which is actually companion. And I have over on the right side that she is found in obviously the book of Ruth, but she's also mentioned in Matthew 1:5 in the genealogy of Christ. So, and then I'm going to sketch out her family tree again, because I'm not doing a very like in-depth sketch here, but her genealogy is very important. So she's only one of four women mentioned in the genealogy of Christ. And so I want to try to pull this aspect into there. So I kind of penciled it out, and then I ended up sort of, redoing this. I'm going to add some, colored squares around the names, but basically we have, Elimelech and Naomi, and then you have their two sons, Mahlon and Kilion, and then all three of these women became widows. And so the daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, were well within their rights to go back to their family. As Naomi decided to travel back to Bethlehem, she is, she's telling her daughters-in-law, go back home. They would have been within their rights. That would have been the custom of the time. And as we know, Orpah did that, but Ruth would not. And it's so key to who she was, and some of the facts about her. And then I'm just indicating here the rest of this kind of family tree. So Ruth obviously then married Boaz. They had Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. Jesse was the father of David. And so then you have the rest of that lineage there. And I just kind of left it there. I didn't obviously go through all of it. But then over here in this kind of open section, I just have some key facts about her. And so one of the things that I wrote, that she was a Moabite, which is very important because that is a pagan group. And so when she left, she was leaving behind her identity. And that's the next part that I wrote, is that she gave up her family and her religion to follow a God that she did not know. And that's not how, she was raised. She was a Moabite. She was devoted to family. She was a hard worker, which we learn about later. She was teachable. She was obedient. She was virtuous. That's actually mentioned in Ruth 3:11, and she was trusting. And so these are kind of just some facts about her. I did not include that she was, but this is a fact too, that she was only one of 4 women mentioned in the genealogy of Christ. So, over here on the left, I'm kind of just going to list a few of the key verses that I want to focus on. What you want to focus on, could be completely different, but I have a couple verses of Ruth 1:16 through 17, Ruth 2:12, and Ruth 3:11. I just felt like those were important verses to kind of focus on, because I want really to focus on this idea that she had of speaking to her mother-in-law and saying, please, I want to follow you. Your God will be my God. And so that I'm coming back through with some of the Bible study bits from Bythewell4god that coordinate with this, and just to give this a little bit more color, using those little circles. I used a little arrow for the scriptures, and then I'm turning the page over, and I am using another one of those little paint strips, or like paint swatches. I'm using a slick writer basically from Mr. Pen so that I can write on this sticker, because I'm going to write out these verses, just a couple of them from Ruth. And this is chapter 1, verse 16 through 17. And it says, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." This was her devotion to Naomi. And it goes back to that idea too of, she was leaving behind her entire identity, her entire religion and upbringing and family and everything to follow Naomi. And so, and really in trusting in a God that she was not even aware of, in a sense, because she came from a pagan religion. And so it's just such a beautiful story. Like I said, I love the story of Ruth. There's so much to uncover, but it really speaks to her level of devotion, her level of obedience, because the fact that she was teachable. Naomi had to teach her a lot of things about how to kind of go in and out amongst these people that she was finding herself with. And so she was a hard worker. She was, gleaning in the fields and those kinds of things at that time. Part of what they were instructed to do was to leave the edges of the fields and things for the widows and people that were needy. And so that's what she was doing. That's how she found Boaz, and kind of that rest of that story unfolds. And so I have a section here that I just wrote as key lessons, and these are just a few takeaways from this that I think are really kind of important. And so the first one I wrote is that God directs our steps and has a perfect plan for each of us, as is told in Jeremiah 29:11. And we have to believe that God works in our lives in all that we encounter. And these points are some of that I pulled from that Remarkable Women of the Bible book by Elizabeth George. The next thing I wrote is that we should seek to see his hand in every event in our lives, trust that he works all things together for good, which is Romans 8:28. I'm just using some stickers here from By the Well, again, to kind of, underscore these points. And then I thought this quote was so good from Elizabeth George, which is, "True service is love in working clothes." And then she goes on to talk about that this is service to others, service to your husband, to your children, to your church, to all. And then there's some associated scriptures, and I have those notated over to the side of all of that. And then I just indicated down at the bottom that, this section of information came from the Remarkable Women of the Bible. And it's one of the things, like I said, that I just really love about the way that book is kind of laid out, is that you can really find some fun takeaways. And so, like I said, there's a whole lot that you could go into in this story, because there's so much of that redemption story that we see in Boaz, taking on, doing the rightful work of the Redeemer kinsman, and there's just, it's so beautiful, this story. But this is just kind of the section that I wanted to focus on, was really some of the character traits that made all of that possible in Ruth. That she was teachable, that she was obedient, that she was, willing to do what Naomi was instructing her to do, and trusting in God. And even, it was even a credit to her that she was virtuous, and that, that the Lord was, she was coming underneath the Lord's safety, the wing, the safety of the refuge, I think is how it actually refers to her. So anyway, this is how this page ended up. I hope that this was helpful. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and until next time, bye.